My name is Chet Williams, 67 years old, retired history teacher from Fairfield High. Been living alone in my Vermont home since Marcia passed 4 years ago. Life was peaceful until last Sunday when my son Gregory showed up unannounced. Over coffee, he dropped the bombshell. My wife, kids, and her mother are moving in. It's final, no discussion. Then he just left to bring them over. He had no idea what would be waiting when they returned, 3 hours later. If you are watching this right now, let me know where you are viewing from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and stick around to see what happens when someone tries to bulldoze over your boundaries. The morning Gregory dropped his bombshell started like any other Sunday. I was up at 6, same as when I was still teaching, old habits being what they are. First cup of coffee on my east-facing porch, watching the sun paint the green mountains with that golden light that makes Vermont famous. The air had that early autumn crispness, leaves just starting to turn. My routine has been pretty much the same since Marcia passed. Wake up early, coffee on the porch, then breakfast while reading the local paper. Sundays I would water my vegetable garden before heading to church. Pastor Williams always saves me a spot in the third pew, left side. After service I usually chat with friends, maybe grab lunch at Dottie's Diner with Walter and his wife Joan if they are free. Afternoons I read or work on small projects around the house, simple pleasures, but they filled my days with purpose. Marcia and I had 40 wonderful years together. High school sweethearts who married right after college. She was an elementary school teacher, beloved by generations of students. We raised 2 children, Gregory and Linda. When Marcia was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, the doctors gave her 6 months. She fought bravely for 18. Every day I miss her laugh, the way she hummed while cooking, how she could calm a room just by walking into it. After she passed, I was lost for a while. The house felt too big, too quiet. Some friends suggested selling, moving to one of those retirement communities. But this was our home. We picked out every paint color, planted every tree in the yard. Marcia designed the garden that still blooms each spring. I couldn't leave all those memories. Instead, I learned to live differently, joined a widower's support group at the community center, started volunteering 3 days a week at the local library, shelving books and helping with their literacy program, made new friends, reconnected with old ones who had drifted away during Marcia's illness when caretaking took all my time. My home isn't fancy, just a 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Street. Marcia and I bought it when Gregory was on the way, paid it off 20 years ago. The blue paint might need touching up, but I keep everything in good repair. My workshop in the garage is where I spend many happy hours, building small furniture pieces I donate to charity auctions. The garden produces more vegetables than I can eat, so I share with neighbors. My back deck, which I rebuilt myself last summer, is where I host small gatherings for friends. It's a good life, different than what I planned, but good. My relationship with Gregory has always been complicated. He was our firstborn, bright and charismatic. Marcia doted on him. Maybe we both did. Linda, our daughter, was more independent from the start. She now lives in Seattle with her wife Kate, both successful attorneys. They visit twice a year and call every Sunday evening, regular as clockwork. Gregory had a different path, always intelligent but restless. Started college 3 times before finishing. Went through a string of jobs in his 20s. Met Sophia at 32. Seemed to finally settle down. Their wedding was a lavish affair, more elaborate than Marcia and I thought necessary, but we contributed what we could. Gregory has worked in sales for various companies, never staying anywhere long enough to advance. Sophia comes from money, her family helping them purchase a house in a neighborhood fancier than they could afford on their own. The grandchildren are a bright spot. Tommy is 8, a curious boy who loves science and building things. Grace is 6, artistic and thoughtful. Marcia only got to know them as babies before she passed. I treasure the rare visits when they come over, though these have become less frequent over the past 2 years. I keep a closet full of toys and books for them, update it regularly even though they rarely use them. Financially, I'm comfortable but not wealthy. Taught high school history for 35 years, built up a decent pension. Marcia and I were always careful savers. The house is paid off, and my monthly expenses are modest. I can afford small luxuries like my woodworking tools or occasional dinner out with friends. Enough to help the kids if there's a real emergency. Though I worry sometimes about Gregory and Sophia's spending habits. The few times I've visited their house, I've noticed new furniture, expensive electronics, designer clothes, things I would consider extravagances. Last spring, I spent 3 weeks renovating my bathroom, replacing the old tub with a walk-in shower, installing grab bars. Getting older means thinking ahead. Walter helped with the plumbing, but I did most of the work myself. I take pride in maintaining my independence. At the senior center where I play chess on Thursdays, I see too many folks who waited too long to adapt their homes, ended up having to leave them entirely after a fall. That Sunday morning, as I sipped my coffee and watched a pair of cardinals at the bird feeder Marcia hung years ago, I had no idea my peaceful world was about to be upended. No idea that by sunset, everything would change. The doorbell rang at 11:30, just as I was putting away the church bulletin and thinking about lunch. Gregory rarely visits unannounced, so seeing him on my doorstep was a surprise. "Come in, son," I said, noticing immediately that something was off. His normally perfectly styled hair was uncombed, his expensive polo shirt wrinkled. Gregory has always been fastidious about his appearance, even as a teenager. "Hey, Dad," he said, stepping inside but hovering awkwardly in the entryway. "Got any coffee?" I led him to the kitchen, put on a fresh pot. As it brewed, Gregory paced, picking things up and setting them down, avoiding eye contact. My stomach tightened. Last time he acted this way, he was about to ask for money to cover credit card debt he had hidden from Sophia. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting a mug in front of him. 3 sugars, splash of milk, the way he likes it. He took a long sip, then another. Then his demeanor changed, like a switch had flipped. His shoulders straightened, his expression hardened. The nervous energy disappeared, replaced by something colder, more calculated. "Look, Dad," he said, setting down the mug with a thunk. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. We're moving in with you." For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Moving in? Who? All of us. Me, Sophia, the kids, and Angela, Sophia's mom. I sat down heavily, mind racing. Gregory and Sophia owned a 4-bedroom house in Oakwood Estates, one of the nicer developments 10 miles from my modest neighborhood. Angela, Sophia's widowed mother, lived in a condo near them. "I don't understand," I finally said. "What's happened to your house?" Gregory stared into his coffee. "Foreclosure. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage." 3 months? Gregory, why didn't you say something sooner? I could have helped you catch up, worked out a plan. He waved dismissively. "It's beyond that now. The bank's not working with us anymore. But moving in here? All of you? This house only has 3 bedrooms. And what about Angela's condo?" Now came the attitude I recognized from Gregory since childhood when confronted with consequences. The slight sneer, the defensive posture. "Angela's place is too small for all of us," he said. "She sold it last month to help us, but it wasn't enough. Besides, you have all this space for just one person. The kids can share a room. Angela can take the guest room. Sophia and I will take the master." I felt my breath catch. The master bedroom. Mine and Marcia's room. The room where she spent her final days, where I still keep her reading glasses on the bedside table, where her perfume still lingers faintly in the closet. "I can't let you have that room," I said quietly. Gregory rolled his eyes. "Dad, be practical. It's the biggest bedroom. You can move into the smaller one. You don't need all that space." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Moving in is a major decision. We need to discuss this properly. There are alternatives. Maybe I could help with a rental until you get back on your feet." "That's just it, Dad," he interrupted. "We've already given notice at our place. We're out by the end of the month, but the sooner we move, the better. Sophia and I think it's best if we're all settled before the kids start the new school quarter." The presumption stunned me. I've always tried to help my children, but this felt different. Not asking for help, but announcing a complete takeover of my life, my home, my space. I need some time to think about this, I said. Let's talk about options. That's when Gregory leaned forward, voice hardening further. Dad, I'm not asking. We're moving in. It's final. No discussion. I felt like I'd been slapped. Why, Gregory? What happened that you're in this situation? He looked away, and in that moment, I knew there was more to the story. Gregory has never been good at hiding guilt. It's complicated, he muttered. Market downturns. Investments that didn't pay off. I waited, knowing there was more. We sat in silence until he finally broke. Fine. I had some gambling issues. Online poker. Sports betting. It got out of hand. The admission hit me like a physical blow. Gambling. The same problem that had caused trouble in his college years, that Marcia and I had paid thousands to help him overcome. The addiction he had sworn was behind him when he married Sophia. Gregory, you need help, not a new living arrangement, I said gently. He stood up abruptly, face flushing. Save the lecture. I've heard it all before. This isn't about the gambling. It's about family helping family. You owe us this. I owe you. The words stung. Yes, you do, he said, voice rising. Mom would have wanted you to help us. She always put family first, and after all she spent on my college, my wedding, I could barely process what I was hearing. Gregory was not only demanding to move his entire family into my home, but suggesting I owed it to him because of what his mother had done for him, as if Marcia's love and sacrifice were transactional, creating a debt I now needed to pay. Gregory, I said slowly, this is not how family works. If you need help, I'll help, but taking over my house without discussion is not the answer. He checked his watch ostentatiously. Look, I don't have time to debate this. Sophia is packing the last of our essential stuff. We're coming over in about 3 hours with the first load. You have until then to clear out your dresser for Sophia. Well, figure out the rest of the move over the next few days. With that, he stood up and headed for the door. I followed, still trying to process everything. Gregory, wait. We need to talk about this more. He turned at the door, expression cold. No, we don't. It's happening, Dad. You might as well accept it. You'll thank us later anyway. Having us around will be good for you. Keep you from being so lonely. Then he was gone, car pulling away from the curb before I could say another word. I stood in my doorway, watching his car disappear down Maple Street, feeling like the ground had dropped out from under me. 3 hours. They were coming back in 3 hours to begin taking over my home, my life, my last connection to Marcia. And according to my son, I should be grateful for it. After Gregory left, I sank into my recliner, the one Marcia picked out for my 60th birthday. My mind was a storm of emotions, thoughts racing so fast I could barely grasp them before another took its place. Anger at Gregory's presumption, worry for my grandchildren, guilt at the thought of turning away family in need, fear of losing the peaceful life I'd carefully rebuilt. What would Marcia do? The question came automatically, as it had so often in the 4 years since her passing. In difficult moments, I still found myself turning to her wisdom, imagining her counsel. Marcia had always been the more nurturing parent, quick to comfort, to smooth over hurt feelings. But she was also practical, with a strong sense of justice. She loved Gregory fiercely but saw his flaws clearly. I remembered a conversation from when Gregory was in college, after his first gambling problem emerged. Wed just paid off $8,000 in debts, money Wed been saving for a special anniversary trip. We can't keep doing this, Marcia had said that night, sitting at our kitchen table. If we bail him out every time, he'll never learn to stand on his own feet. I had agreed. Yet over the years, Wed continued stepping in. A loan here, a bill paid there. Always with promises from Gregory that it was the last time. Always with the hope that this intervention would be the one that changed his path. Now, staring at the family photos on my mantle, I wondered how many chances was enough. When did help become enabling? I picked up the phone and called Walter. In the 40 years we'd been friends, had never steered me wrong. He sounds like a bulldozer, not a son, Walter said after I explained the situation. What are you thinking of doing? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me says family comes first, especially with the grandkids involved. But another part feels like him being steamrolled. Because you are, Walter replied. Listen, Chet. Sometimes love means not enabling destructive behavior. From what you've told me, Gregory hasn't hit bottom yet, hasn't had to face real consequences. But the grandkids will learn valuable lessons either way. They'll either learn that Grandpa is a pushover who can be manipulated, or they'll learn that actions have consequences, even for adults. Walter's words hit home. What would Tommy and Grace learn if they watched their father commandeer my home without discussion? If they saw that ultimatums and demands were how family treated each other? What lesson would that teach about respect, about boundaries? The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about my comfort or preferences. This was about something deeper, about dignity, about teaching through example. I remembered the promise I made to Marcia in her final weeks. She had gripped my hand one evening, her once strong fingers now fragile as bird bones. Promise me you'll live fully, Chet, she had whispered. Don't just exist in this house like a caretaker of memories. And don't let Gregory take advantage of your good heart. As a grown man now, let him find his own way. I'd promised, though at the time I wasn't sure what finding his own way might entail. Now it seemed clearer. Gregory needed to solve his own problems, needed to protect and provide for his family through his own efforts, not by commandeering mine. I stood up suddenly, speaking aloud to my empty living room. Not this time. The words felt right, solid, true. Not this time would I enable behavior that ultimately hurt Gregory more than helped him. Not this time would I sacrifice my peace and dignity out of misplaced guilt. Not this time would I break my promise to Marcia. I had 3 hours before they arrived. Not much time, but enough if I moved quickly. I needed a plan. First, I called Doris Abernathy, a retired attorney who played in the same bridge group as Marcia and me for 20 years. I explained the situation, asking about my legal rights. It's your house, Chet, she said firmly. Your name alone on the deed since Marcia passed. Gregory has no right to move in without your permission, let alone take over your bedroom. If they show up with moving vans, you can refuse entry. If they somehow get in and won't leave, you can call the police for a civil standby while they remove themselves. Her clear, matter-of-fact assessment steadied me. I wasn't powerless here. I had rights, and exercising them wasn't cruel or unloving. It was necessary. Next, I packed a suitcase with clothes, toiletries, medications, and important documents. I gathered the most precious photographs, Marcia's jewelry that I'd been saving for Linda, and my laptop. These I would take with me. Other valuables, items that couldn't be easily replaced but that I wouldn't immediately need, I packed into boxes. Family heirlooms, important papers, the quilt Marcia's grandmother had made. I called my neighbor Frank, explained briefly that I had a family situation, and asked if I could store some boxes in his garage temporarily. Sure thing, neighbor, Frank said, coming over immediately to help carry the boxes across our adjoining lawns. Everything okay? Family drama, I said simply. Just being cautious. With my most valuable and meaningful possessions secured, I called Linda in Seattle. She and Kate had always seen Gregory more clearly than Marcia and I had, perhaps because they weren't blinded by parental hopes and fears. Dad, this is outrageous, Linda said when I explained. You can't let him do this. I'm not planning to, I assured her. But I wanted you to know what's happening. Do you need me to fly out? I can be there tomorrow. Her immediate offer of support warmed my heart. No need for that yet, sweetheart. I have a plan. I'm going to stay with Walter for a few days while this gets sorted out. Good. And Dad, remember that you taught us to respect ourselves and others. Gregory needs to remember that lesson too. After hanging up, I sat down and wrote 3 letters, one for each grandchild, expressing my love and explaining in simple terms that Grandpa needed some time to work things out with their daddy, but that I would see them soon. I tucked a small gift in each envelope, a carved wooden train for Tommy, a watercolor set for Grace. The third letter was for Gregory. In it, I explained that I would not be allowing them to move in, but that I would help them find and secure appropriate housing. I offered to pay the security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment if Gregory agreed to financial counseling and treatment for his gambling addiction. I was setting a boundary, but also extending a hand. With these tasks complete, I took a final walk through my house, the home Marcia and I had shared for 30 years, where we'd raised our children, celebrated holidays, weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical, where Id held Marcia as she took her last breath, promising to live well in her absence. I touched the doorframe where we had marked the children's heights, ran my hand along the banister Marcia had insisted on keeping when we renovated, even though it wasn't quite straight. I looked at the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, illuminating the herb garden Marcia had started and I still maintained. This house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the physical embodiment of our life together and of the life I was still creating for myself. I would not let it be taken over through ultimatums and guilt. As the clock ticked closer to Gregory's promised return, I placed the grandchildren's letters on their beds in what had been their overnight room during visits. I left Gregory's letter on the kitchen table where Head sat hours before. Then I carried my suitcase to the front porch, locked the door behind me, and sat down in the white wicker chair to wait. Not this time. Sitting on my porch with determination settling into my bones, I realized I needed more guidance to handle this situation legally and carefully. I pulled out my cell phone and called Doris again for more specific advice. "Chet, the key is to remain calm and clear," she advised. "Since Gregory said they're bringing their stuff in about 3 hours, you need to act within your rights, but without escalation." I asked what she recommended specifically. Her answer was practical and direct. First, document everything. Keep a record of what Gregory said, word for word as best you can remember. Second, make it physically clear you're not permitting them to move in. Locked doors, a clear verbal statement when they arrive. Third, have witnesses if possible, or even consider recording the conversation on your phone if things get heated. I thanked Doris and followed her advice immediately, writing down everything I could remember from Gregory's visit while it was fresh in my mind. I described his appearance, his exact words, his demeanor. This might be important later, though I hated thinking of my relationship with my son in terms of potential legal evidence. Next, I needed to secure my temporary living arrangement. I called Walter back. "Of course you can stay with us," he said without hesitation. "Joan and I have the spare room all made up. Stay as long as you need." "I hope it won't be more than a few days," I said. "Just until I can be sure Gregory understands I'm serious." "Well, be here," Walter assured me. "And Chet, I'm proud of you. This can't be easy." It wasn't. Every instinct as a father urged me to help my child, to make his path easier. But sometimes help doesn't look like what we expect. Sometimes it looks like allowing natural consequences, like tough love. With my own immediate needs addressed, I turned my attention to securing my home. I went through each room, closing windows and making sure everything was locked. I turned off the water main in case they tried to force entry while I was gone. I set up my home security camera to notify my phone of any movement. In the garage, I found the spare key Gregory still had from years ago, when Head helped with lawn care during Marcia's illness. It never asked for it back, never thought I needed to. I removed it from its hiding place in the tool drawer, one less way for him to enter without permission. As I worked, my phone rang. It was Frank from next door. "Chet, there's a rental truck turning onto our street," he said. "Thought you should know." My heart jumped. They were early. I checked my watch. Only an hour and a half had passed since Gregory's departure. Either he had lied about the timing, or they'd rushed their packing. Either way, I needed to finish quickly. "Thanks, Frank," I said. "Could you do me one more favor? If you see them pulling into my driveway, could you come over? I'd appreciate having a witness to whatever happens next." "You bet," Frank said. "Joan and I both will come." With time running short, I packed the last few items. I'd need a framed photo of Marcia for my temporary bedside, my blood pressure medication, phone charger, and the novel I'd been reading. Everything else could wait. I thought about my grandchildren, heart aching at the confusion they must be feeling. Tommy and Grace adored their father, as all children do. They wouldn't understand why Grandpa was refusing to help their family. All they'd see was conflict, tension. Adults they loved at odds with each other. I pulled out my phone again and called Linda back. "Dad? Everything okay?" "They're on their way earlier than expected," I explained. "I'm worried about Tommy and Grace. This will be hard for them to understand." Linda's voice softened. "They love you, Dad. Kids are resilient, and they're smart. They'll understand more than you think, especially if you're honest with them in age-appropriate ways." I should talk to them directly, I realized. Not just leave letters, but when? How? Gregory and Sophia would likely limit access if they felt I was undermining them. "Maybe I could suggest meeting at the park this weekend," I said, thinking aloud. Neutral territory. I could explain that I love them, but Grandpa's house is too small for everyone. "That's perfect," Linda said. "And Dad? Kate and I have been talking. If things get really difficult, we have plenty of room here. The kids could even transfer to school mid-year if needed." I appreciated the offer but hoped it wouldn't come to that. Despite everything, I wanted Gregory to succeed as a father, as a husband, as a man. I wanted him to overcome his demons and build a stable life. I just couldn't sacrifice my own well-being to make it happen. As I was hanging up, I heard a vehicle pulling into my driveway. Looking out the window, I saw not the expected rental truck, but Gregory's SUV. He was alone. I stepped onto the porch, suitcase beside me, letter in hand. "Dad?" Gregory called as he got out of the car. "What are you doing? Why is your suitcase out here?" I stayed calm, kept my voice steady. "Gregory, I've been thinking about what you said earlier. I'm not willing to have you all move in here." His face darkened, the same expression Head had since childhood when told no. "But Dad, we've already decided. The rental truck's on its way with our stuff. The kids are excited about living with Grandpa." "You decided," I corrected gently. "Not we. And I'm sorry, but my answer is no. You can't be serious." Gregory looked genuinely shocked, as if the possibility of refusal had never occurred to him. "Where are we supposed to go?" I handed him the envelope. "I've written everything down here. I'm willing to help you find and pay for an apartment. First month's rent and security deposit. But there are conditions." He took the envelope but didn't open it. "Conditions? Like what?" "Like getting help for your gambling. Like financial counseling. Like taking responsibility for your choices instead of expecting others to accommodate them." Gregory crumpled the envelope in his fist. "This is unbelievable. Mom would be ashamed of you. Turning away your own son." The words stung, but I held firm. "Your mother would want you to stand on your own feet, Gregory. She loved you too much to watch you keep making the same mistakes." His face flushed with anger. "So that's it? You're just going to leave? Abandon your family when we need you?" "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said. "I'm offering real help, not a band-aid. And yes, I'm staying with Walter for a few days while you figure out your next steps. But I'm not letting you move in here. That isn't happening." Just then, Frank and Joan appeared in my driveway, casually walking over as if they happened to be passing by. Gregory glanced at them, then back at me, realizing he had witnesses to this confrontation. "Fine," he spat. "Stay with your precious house. Well, figure something out without you." He turned to leave, then whirled back. "But don't expect to see the grandkids. If you don't want to help us, why should they visit you?" It was a low blow, using the children as leverage. I felt a flash of anger but kept my composure. "That's between you and your conscience, Gregory. But remember, relationships go both ways. Actions have consequences. I'm here when you're ready to talk about real solutions." He stormed back to his car without another word, backing out of the driveway with squealing tires. Frank and Joan moved to stand beside me. "You okay, Chet?" Frank asked quietly. I nodded, though in truth I felt hollowed out. Confrontation has never been my strong suit. Standing up to my own son felt like an act against nature itself. "You're doing the right thing," Joan said, patting my arm. "He'll see that eventually." I hoped she was right. For now, I picked up my suitcase and walked with them to their car. Frank would drive me to Walter's house, away from the coming storm. I'd done all I could for the moment. The rest was up to Gregory. As we drove away, I looked back at my home, standing solid and quiet in the afternoon sun. I thought of all it represented, all the love, all the memories, all the growth, both joyful and painful, and I knew with certainty that I'd made the right choice. Not just for me, but ultimately for Gregory too. Sometimes love means saying no. I spent the afternoon at Walter's house, alternating between periods of nervous pacing and sitting silently, phone clutched in my hand. Joan made tea that went cold in my cup. Walter tried distracting me with talk of the upcoming fishing season. Both understood my distraction. At 4:30, my phone buzzed with an alert from my home security camera. I pulled up the app to see a rental truck backing into my driveway, followed by Gregory's SUV and another car I recognized as belonging to Sophia. 3 vehicles, full of people and possessions, arriving to claim a space that wasn't offered to them. I watched on the small screen as Gregory tried his key in the front door, then the back door, finding both locked. I saw him peering through windows, hands cupped against the glass. Then, he pulled out his phone. Seconds later, my phone rang. "Gregory," I answered but said nothing. "Dad, where are you?" Gregory demanded. "We're here with all our stuff and the house is locked." "I know," I said simply. "I told you I'm not agreeing to this arrangement." A pause. Then, "So what? You're just going to leave us homeless? With 2 kids? Is that the kind of grandfather you want to be?" The emotional manipulation was so transparent it almost made me angry. Instead, I felt sad. Had I raised a son who thought this was an acceptable way to treat people, to get his needs met? "Gregory," I said calmly, "I'm at Walter's. I'm not coming home until you've found alternative arrangements. The offer in my letter stands. I'll help with an apartment, but you all are not moving into my house." Through the security camera, I watched him kick my front door in frustration. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, both through the phone and visible on my screen. "We have nowhere else to go." "That's not true, and you know it," I replied. "You have options. Your in-laws have a lake house sitting empty most of the year. You have friends with spare rooms. There are extended stay hotels. You have choices, Gregory. Living in my house without my consent just isn't one of them." I could hear Sophia in the background now, asking what was happening. The camera showed her getting out of her car, the children following. Tommy was clutching a stuffed dinosaur, Grace holding her mother's hand. Behind them, an older woman emerged slowly from the passenger seat of Sophia's car. Angela, my daughter-in-law's mother, whom I'd met only a handful of times at family functions. "What's going on?" I heard Sophia ask. "Why aren't we going inside?" "Dad is being completely unreasonable," Gregory said, holding the phone away from his mouth but still audible. "He changed the locks." That wasn't true. It'd simply locked doors that Gregory expected to find open. But I let the misrepresentation slide, focusing on the bigger issue. "Gregory," I said into the phone, "Sophia and the children and Angela are there now. Please put me on speaker so I can talk to everyone." A moment of silence, then, "Fine, you're on speaker." I took a deep breath. "Sophia, Angela, I'm sorry about this situation. I know it's stressful for everyone, but I cannot and will not have 5 people move into my home without proper discussion and agreement, especially with the circumstances as they are." "What circumstances?" Angela asked sharply. Her voice was strong, authoritative. I'd always had the impression she was the decision-maker in their family. "Has Gregory told you why you've lost your house?" I asked. "About the gambling debts?" I watched through the camera as Sophia whirled to face Gregory, shock evident even in the grainy video. Through the phone came her voice, high and tight. "Gambling? You said it was investment losses." Gregory waved dismissively. "Same difference. Look, can we not do this in the driveway for all the neighbors to see?" That struck me as ironic, given that his plan would have brought moving trucks and a complete family relocation for all the neighbors to witness. But again, I stayed focused. "Sophia," I continued, Im offering to help with the security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment. But Im not willing to have you all move in here, especially not with Gregory refusing to address the real issues at hand. On the screen, I could see Sophia deflate, shoulders slumping. Angela stepped forward, taking the phone from Gregory. Chet, this is Angela. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right call. I sold my condo to help them, thinking it was legitimate financial hardship. Had I known about gambling, I would have made different choices. In the background, Gregory threw up his hands in exasperation. Oh great, now everyone's against me. The children were looking increasingly distressed. Tommy had tears streaming down his face. Grace was hiding behind her mother. My heart ached for them, caught in adult problems they couldn't possibly understand. Angela, I said, could you put Tommy and Grace on the phone for a moment? After some shuffling, I heard Tommy's tearful voice. Grandpa? Hey, buddy, I said gently. I'm sorry about all this grown-up stuff happening right now. I want you to know that I love you and Grace very, very much. This isn't about you, okay? Then why can't we live with you? Why don't you want us? His simple question pierced my heart. I want to see you all the time, Tommy. But my little house isn't big enough for everyone to live comfortably. You and Grace need your own rooms, your own space to grow. We're going to figure this out, I promise. Grace got on the phone next, her small voice wavering. Are you mad at Daddy? No, sweetheart, I assured her. Daddy and I just disagree about some grown-up things. But we both love you very much. Can you be brave for me? Can you help Tommy be brave too? I heard her sniffle, then say with determination, I'll try, Grandpa. That's my girl. The phone went back to Angela, who spoke quietly. What do you suggest we do right now, Chet? It's getting late. The children need dinner and beds. I had anticipated this question. Do you still have family in Burlington? I asked, referring to Angela's sister who lived about 40 minutes away. Yes, Diane is still there. Call her. Ask if you can stay for a few days, just until you sort out next steps. I know she has plenty of room. Gregory grabbed the phone back. We're not staying with Aunt Diane. She's impossible. In the background, I heard Angela say sharply, Beggars can't be choosers, Gregory. And right now, you're begging. There was a moment of tense silence, broken by Sophia's voice. Calmer now, but with an edge of steel. Let's go to Diane's. The kids need stability. We can figure everything else out tomorrow. I watched through the camera as the family dynamics shifted before my eyes. Gregory, usually dominant through sheer force of personality, suddenly found himself outvoted. Angela and Sophia conferred quietly, then began herding the children back to the car. Gregory stood alone by the rental truck, phone still in hand. Dad, he said, voice no longer demanding but almost pleading. Can't we at least store our stuff in your garage? Just temporarily? It was a reasonable request, one I might have granted under different circumstances, but instinct told me it was the thin edge of the wedge, allow their possessions, and soon arguments would be made for allowing the people who owned them. I'm sorry, Gregory, I said firmly. No, once you've secured a new place, I'll help you move, but not here, not now. This is unbelievable, he muttered. My own father. I love you, son, I said. Enough to not let you take the easy way out again. Enough to want better for you than short-term solutions that become long-term problems. He hung up without responding. Through the camera, I watched him storm back to the rental truck, slam the door, and start the engine. The SUV and Sophia's car pulled away first, heading out of the neighborhood. The truck followed more slowly, weighted down with possessions now with no destination. As their taillights disappeared, I sat back in Walter's guest room, emotionally drained but certain I had done the right thing. The confrontation had been painful but necessary, and perhaps, I reflected, more productive than I might have expected. Angela and Sophia now knew the truth about Gregory's gambling. That knowledge might be the catalyst for real change, something my enabling never could have accomplished. I texted Frank to ask him to check that my doors were secure, then turned off my phone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, I needed rest. The kind that comes from knowing you've stood your ground with integrity, even when it hurts. The first week after the confrontation was the hardest. Gregory called repeatedly, cycling through anger, manipulation, and pleading. I held firm to my boundary. I would help them find and secure a rental apartment, but they could not move into my home. Walter and Joan were gracious hosts, giving me space when I needed quiet and company when the silence grew too heavy. I spent most days at their house, returning to my own only to check the mail and ensure everything was secure. Each time I went home, I half expected to find Gregory and family moved in despite my objections. But the house remained empty, peaceful, untouched. On Wednesday, 3 days after the driveway confrontation, Linda called with news. "Dad, Gregory tried to contact us," she said. "Wanted to know if we could loan him $20,000 for a down payment on a new house." I sighed, unsurprised but disappointed. "What did you tell him?" "That we'd consider it after he completes 6 months of gambling addiction treatment and financial counseling." Kate and I agreed that enabling him isn't helping. I felt a surge of gratitude for my daughter's level-headed approach. "Thank you for understanding." "Of course, Dad. You taught us about boundaries, remember? Just because someone is family doesn't mean they get a free pass to treat you poorly." By the end of the week, Sophia called me directly. It was the first contact I'd had with her since the driveway scene. "Chet," she began hesitantly, "I want to apologize. I had no idea Gregory was planning to simply announce we were moving in. He told me he'd discussed it with you, and you'd agreed. The deception didn't surprise me, but it saddened me further. What else did Gregory mislead you about, Sophia?" A long pause. "Everything, it seems. The extent of our financial problems, where the money was going, how long the gambling has been an issue." She sounded exhausted, defeated. "We're staying with Angela at her sister's house. It's crowded but manageable for now." "And Gregory?" I asked cautiously. "Hez here too," she said. "But things are tense. Angela and I have made it clear he needs to get help or—" She trailed off, the unfinished threat hanging between us. "Or what?" I prompted gently. "Or I'll take the kids and go stay with my cousin in Philadelphia. I can't keep doing this, Chet. The lies, the financial chaos, the instability. Tommy had nightmares all week. Grace barely speaks. My heart ached for my grandchildren. Innocent casualties in their fathers, battle with addiction and poor choices. Can I talk to them?" I asked. "Of course," she said, sounding relieved. "They miss you. They've been asking when they can see Grandpa." The conversation with Tommy and Grace was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. They were confused, unsure why everything in their lives had suddenly changed. I did my best to reassure them without making promises I couldn't keep. After that call, I began a new routine. I would FaceTime with the grandchildren every evening at 7, reading them stories or just chatting about their day. It wasn't the same as seeing them in person, but it maintained our connection through the turmoil. The second week brought new challenges. Word of our family situation had spread through our small community. While picking up groceries, I overheard whispers. "That's Chet Williams. Turned away his own son, left his grandchildren homeless." The mischaracterization stung, but I reminded myself that others' opinions were based on incomplete information. Only those directly involved knew the full story. Some family members took sides. Marcia's sister called, furious that I'd let her great-niece and nephew stay in crowded temporary housing rather than welcome them into my home. "Marcia would be devastated by your selfishness," she declared. I disagreed but didn't argue. "It's not selfishness to refuse to enable destructive behavior," I said simply. Marcia's last wish was for Gregory to learn to stand on his own feet. In honoring that wish, others were more supportive. Cousins, friends, fellow church members rallied around with words of encouragement. Pastor Williams visited Walter and Joan's house specifically to tell me he thought I was handling a difficult situation with Grace. By the third week, things began to shift. Gregory, faced with the combined pressure from Sophia, Angela, and now Linda, finally agreed to attend a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. He went reluctantly, according to Sophia, but he went. It was a small step, but significant. I moved back into my own home, the immediate crisis having passed. Gregory still wasn't speaking to me directly, communicating only through Sophia about practical matters like picking up mail that had been sent to their foreclosed house. The hardest moment came during one of my evening FaceTime sessions with the grandchildren. Tommy, always direct, asked the question he'd been dreading. "Grandpa," he said, his small face serious on my screen, "don't you love us anymore? If you loved us, you'd let us live with you." The question broke my heart. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Tommy, I love you and Grace more than I can possibly say. But sometimes, loving someone means making hard choices that don't seem loving at first." His face scrunched in confusion. "I don't get it. Think of it like this," I tried. "Remember when you had that bad sore throat last winter, and the doctor gave you medicine that tasted terrible?" He nodded. "You didn't want to take it because it tasted bad, but Mommy and Daddy made you take it anyway. Not because they wanted to make you unhappy, but because sometimes what's good for you doesn't feel good right away. Does that make sense?" He considered this, then nodded again, slowly. "So, you're giving Daddy bad-tasting medicine?" I smiled sadly. "Something like that, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups need medicine too. Not the kind you drink, but the kind that helps them make better choices." After that conversation, I felt both drained and hopeful. The children might not fully understand now, but someday they would. And perhaps this difficult period would ultimately lead to healthier relationships for all of us. By the end of the month, Gregory, Sophia, and the children had moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with Angela taking the small second bedroom while the children shared the living room pull-out sofa. It wasn't ideal, but it was stable, clean, and within their now limited budget. True to my word, I paid the security deposit and first month's rent. More significantly, Gregory had attended 3 GA meetings and had his first session with a financial counselor. According to Sophia, he was sullen and resentful about it, but participating nonetheless. For the first time since the morning Gregory had arrived with his ultimatum, I felt the knot of anxiety in my chest begin to loosen. There was a long road ahead, but at least we were no longer at the precipice. I invited the family for Sunday dinner, a tentative first step toward rebuilding bridges. Angela and Sophia accepted immediately. Gregory sent word through Sophia that he wasn't ready yet. I understood. Pride takes time to heal. Tommy and Grace came with their mother and grandmother, filling my quiet house with chatter and laughter for a few precious hours. As they played in the backyard, I stood watching from the kitchen window, gratitude overwhelming me that I hadn't lost them in this difficult stand. Change comes slowly, painfully sometimes, but it comes. All we can do is stand firm in our truth, extend compassion where possible, and wait for healing to begin in its own time. 6 months passed, like turning pages in a well-worn book, each day bringing small changes that accumulated into something meaningful. The seasons shifted from autumn to winter, then to the first tentative buds of spring, and our family, like the weather, moved through its own cycles of cold withdrawal and cautious renewal. Gregory attended his Gamblers Anonymous meetings consistently now, earning his 6-month chip with quiet pride. The financial counseling had helped him and Sophia develop a workable budget and begin the long process of rebuilding their credit. He had found a new job with a construction management firm, more stable than his previous sales positions, with less opportunity for the impulsive risk-taking that had fueled his addiction. The apartment was still crowded with 5 people in 2 bedrooms, but they had made it work. Angela had become an unexpected source of stability, helping with childcare and household management while Gregory and Sophia worked. The children had adjusted to their new school, making friends and settling into routines. Most importantly, Gregory had finally, painfully, come to terms with his responsibility for the family's situation. It hadn't happened overnight. The first few months had been rocky, with Gregory still blaming external factors, still occasionally suggesting that my refusal to house them had made everything worse. But reality is a persistent teacher. As the gambling addiction treatment progressed, as he began to understand the patterns that had led to his poor choices, Gregory slowly accepted his role. One Tuesday evening in March, He called me directly for the first time since the confrontation. "Dad," he said simply, "can we talk?" We met at Walter's Diner, neutral territory where the public setting would help keep emotions in check. Gregory looked different, thinner, more subdued, but also more present somehow. The nervous energy that had always surrounded him had calmed. "I need to apologize," he said after we had ordered coffee. "What I tried to do, moving everyone into your house without real discussion, it was wrong, disrespectful, unfair." I nodded, letting him continue without interruption. This moment had been long in coming. In treatment, we've been talking about how addiction isn't just about the gambling or drinking or whatever. It's about patterns, control, avoiding responsibility. He stared into his coffee cup. "I've been doing that my whole life, haven't I? Expecting others, especially you and Mom, to fix my messes." There was no accusation in his tone, just sad realization. It was the most honest we'd been with each other in years. "We all have patterns, Gregory," I said gently. "And parents, well, we sometimes create patterns without meaning to. Your mother and I wanted to protect you from pain. Maybe we protected you too much." He looked up, a glimmer of the old defensiveness flashing briefly, but it faded quickly, replaced by thoughtful consideration. "Maybe," he acknowledged, "but I'm a grown man. Have been for a long time. I can't blame my choices on how I was raised." He hesitated, then added, "I was pretty awful that day, wasn't I? Saying Mom would be ashamed of you, trying to use the kids to manipulate you." I reached across the table, squeezed his hand briefly. "That's in the past now. What matters is where we go from here." We talked for 2 hours, really talked, perhaps for the first time as two adults rather than father and son locked in old dynamics. Gregory shared more about his treatment journey, the hard truths he'd faced about himself. I shared my own struggles with guilt and doubt after holding firm on my boundary. By the time we said goodbye, something had shifted between us. Not healed completely, but shifted toward the possibility of healing, toward a relationship built on mutual respect rather than dependence and enabling. The following Sunday, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my house. The timing was odd, Thanksgiving in spring, but it felt right symbolically. We had much to be thankful for, much to acknowledge. Gregory, Sophia, the children, Angela, and even Linda and Kate, who flew in from Seattle, gathered around my dining table. The conversation was sometimes awkward, old tensions occasionally surfacing, but underlying it all was a new foundation of honesty. After dinner, while the others played board games in the living room, Gregory found me in the kitchen washing dishes. "I need to thank you, Dad," he said quietly, picking up a towel to dry the plates I handed him, "for not giving in that day. If you'd let us move in, it'd never have hit bottom, never would have gotten help." I nodded, throat tight with emotion. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done, Gregory. Standing there on that porch, saying no to my own son. You did what Mom would have wanted." He smiled sadly. "She never did put up with my bullshit, did she?" I laughed softly. "No, she didn't, though she tried to hide it better than I did." We continued washing and drying in comfortable silence for a few minutes. "We're going to be okay, you know," Gregory said eventually. "Sophia and I are saving for our own place. Something modest, within our means this time. No more keeping up appearances." "I'm proud of you, son," I said, and I meant it. The journey hadn't been easy or straight, but he was finding his way. Later that evening, as everyone prepared to leave, I stood on my front porch watching my family gather on the lawn. Tommy was showing Linda a new soccer move. Grace was holding Kate's hand, chattering about her art class. Sophia and Angela were discussing summer garden plans. Gregory joined me on the porch, standing shoulder to shoulder as we observed the scene. "I spent so many years chasing the wrong things, Dad," he said softly. "The big house in the fancy neighborhood, the expensive car, the lifestyle I thought would make me happy." He shook his head. "All that time, what mattered was right in front of me. It's never too late to recognize that," I said. "Never too late to change course." He nodded, then asked hesitantly, "Do you think Mom would be proud of where I am now? After everything?" I considered the question carefully. Your mother loved you completely, Gregory. Through every mistake, every triumph. She would be proud of your courage in facing your demons, in rebuilding. She always believed you had it in you. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. Thanks, Dad, for not giving up on me, even when you had to say no. As the family drove away that evening, I sat in my quiet house, reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months, the pain and uncertainty, the difficult choices, the slow healing. I thought about the nature of love, how sometimes it means standing firm rather than giving in, how sometimes the kindest act is allowing someone to face the consequences of their actions. I wondered what lessons Tommy and Grace would take from this chapter in our family story. Perhaps they would learn that love has many forms, not all of them easy or immediately recognizable. Perhaps they would understand that true support isn't always saying yes, but sometimes saying no with an open hand and heart ready to help in more meaningful ways. The path forward wouldn't be perfect. Recovery has its setbacks, trust rebuilds slowly, and old patterns can reassert themselves in moments of stress. But we had taken the first difficult steps toward a healthier relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than dependence and enablement. As I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had honored my promise to Marcia. I had loved our son enough to let him fall, and then to help him learn to stand on his own. Sometimes, that is the greatest gift we can give those we love, the freedom to find their own strength. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have stood your ground or given in to family pressure? Let me know in the comments below. If this story touched you or reminded you of challenges in your own family, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding courage in difficult moments. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for someone is not what feels good in the moment, but what helps them grow in the long run. Thank you for listening, and I wish you wisdom and courage in your own journey.